Welcome. You are so lucky because for the first time in history, you will be able to choose an adventure right here on the Josh
Gorgeous, baby. You're gorgeous.
podcast.
This is the Josh Podcast Show, the anti-podcast podcast on God and man. The show that everybody's talking about. The show that will become a necessary part of your weekly mental diet. The show that picks up where JoshRolfe.com leaves off. The show title that uses the word podcast 4 times. Introducing your host, Josh Rolfe.
Now, I have admitted in the past that I get scared sometimes. And this isn't like a fear that is so overwhelming that I'm not able to function. But I do sometimes operate under some level of fear. And I hate admitting that, but we're in the day and age where you're supposed to say you're vulnerable and that you're authentic, and you're only authentic when you have weakness. And so I'm showing you some weakness right now. I'm a little worried about this episode because I don't want to get sued. So far, for 4.5 years of running this show, I have somehow escaped lawsuit litigation. I've stayed away from the law. I've steered clear of anything that I might say that might jeopardize my finances. And with this episode, that right now we're in the throes of a mega lawsuit between the Choose Your Own Adventure trademark owners from the company called Choose Co. and Netflix over Netflix's Choose Your Own Adventure movie/video as part of the Black Mirror show. They did an episode called Bandersnatch that is in reality a Choose Your Own Adventure story. So as I do before recording any episodes, I'm going to back up a little here. Before each episode of this show, I conduct vitally important research to make completely crystal clear sure that what I'm about to record is completely original. If there's anything to achieve or accomplish, if there's any objective, if there's any reason for being, reason for my existence on this planet, and any reason for the purpose of this show, it is to maintain some form of originality. If it's been done on another podcast, I won't do it. If it's out there on the internet somewhere, I'll stay far away. I will let others do what others have already done on the 7 or so billion people on the planet. They can do what they do. I'm going to do what I do. When someone Googles any episode that I have done, I want the return on the search results to show exactly one result. And if there's 2 hits on a search, and I'm going to get to the game, okay? You're going to play a game soon. Most podcasts that are big and popular, you have to get through the ads. This is not an ad, but it's, you got to bear through some of this because it's setting the scene for the game that you're about to play that is historic. No one's ever done this. So back to Google. My hope is you search, you're going to get one result. If there's 2 hits on a search and one is not me, I want that second entry, that second Google result to have entered the scene after me, after my episode, after my blog post. I'm fine with others doing it after me. Just know that if you hear it on this podcast, you are getting something new, something different, unlike any other podcast that has ever been made. That is the essence of being an anti-podcast podcast. Now, I say this because I searched the title I wanted for this current episode, which I've called Choose an Adventure, and saw that it has not been done because the original one that I wanted was Choose Your Own Adventure. That's how I found out about this lawsuit. I knew this going in, so I did a little checking on what has been done in this space on other podcasts, and I found at least one defunct podcast by that very name, Choose Your Own Adventure. I don't think they were sued, but maybe they were. Maybe that's why they don't exist anymore. But it had nothing to do with the actual Choose Your Own Adventure stories of yesteryear, which are the owners of the trademark, this company, ChooseCo. It was more of like a talk show between friends. So the Choose Your Own Adventure stories, for those not aware, they were big in the 80s when I was a kid. I think my kids have seen some as well. They may have come back. So I know it's still around. And for those unfamiliar, as you read the series of books, they put out many books. They were all fictional stories. They were geared towards kids. And after a few pages or a chapter, you come to an option that presents to you, the reader, a choice or two. Each option directs you to a different page and can take the story in a lot of different directions. And there were computer games that were similar in those days. Back when, before there were sophisticated graphical interfaces, no pictures, where you would type through different options to solve some kind of mystery. Like there was a popular computer game like that about a castle. I forget the name of it. It could have been Castle. I could never figure it out. It was like go down hall. And then it would say that doesn't work. Like everything I picked didn't work. Well, I want to do my own. And that's what this episode will be. I was inspired to do this podcast, not by Bandersnatch from Netflix, but by Amazon Alexa's The Magic Door Adventures. You tell Alexa there to open the magic door. It opens one of the most convoluted choose your own adventure stories that will get you nowhere fast. For an entire hour, the kids meandered to a haunted lighthouse. They got stuck there trying to find a way for a ship captain ghost who, like us, was also stuck there. We were trying to reunite this ghostly gentleman with his shipmates by fixing the lighthouse. It was not easy. There were lots of rooms. The limitation to any choose your own adventure is you're only given a limited set of options, some of which can make no sense. So one additional piece of commentary I'd like to add right now is how the way Alexa is programmed to read the story is that you and Alexa are together on this choose your own adventure. It's a little creepy. They've personified Alexa. And at one point, she asks you to hold her hand as you step out into the fog together. It's a little messed up. Not sure if anyone has picked up on that. It's like the Joaquin Phoenix movie Her, where his character falls in love with his virtual assistant. And it's kind of like Alexa is hitting on us, making the first move. Amazon is so desperate to create this tight emotional bond between us and its computer, and it's doing it through this game mostly kids will be playing, which is probably their long game. You know, let's have these kids fall for Alexa. Messed up. So Black Mirror an extremely dark techno future drama series on Netflix that I love. They have also jumped into this choose your own adventure foray, and their episode Bandersnatch, as I said, came out recently. And I had already been in the works of creating a choose your own adventure type story, but the Netflix thing was cool, very cool how they did it, but also very dark. And that's part of the choose your own adventure lawsuit, is they said, our stuff is written for young adults, kids, and your show was so gross and vile and disgusting and kind of messes with our brand. So all of that said, I want to introduce you now to the very first choose your own adventure episode on this podcast that isn't a choose your own adventure, because I don't want to get sued. And so the reason I chose the title, first I thought, what if it's the choose your adventure, take out the word own, choose your adventure, and then add adventure to keep with my shtick, which is the podcast, right? I decided I can't, maybe that's too close by just dropping one word. So I thought I'd drop two words. I would drop your own. So that's why I'm calling it the choose an adventure. So different enough. Hopefully won't get me sued for all this podcast is worth, which is the microphone. Okay. Maybe a cord or two connecting the microphone to the computer and stuff. So, I was thinking about cereals and how you have like Fruit Loops, which is by Kellogg's, and then you might have the generic that's called Fruit Spins. Or I looked this up. I thought it was kind of funny. Crispix. There is a generic called Crispix. So absolutely funny. And so hopefully calling this choose an adventure keeps me away from the choose your own adventure people. And it's different enough. And it is a podcast. It's not a book. The Netflix was a movie and not a book. But anyway, I'm trying to be respectful of your brand, people. So just be charitable to me is what I'm asking. So the only rule here is wherever the story goes, you can only choose from the options I give you. There will be a way for you to make a choice through your device, which is desktop, laptop, tablet, smartphone, even flip phone compatible. Okay. That's how broad, open-minded, and diverse I am, that I will accept anyone, no matter what device you are. I will accept you with open arms. You are welcome in the podcast family. Okay, the anti-podcast family. So, however you're listening, select your choice. You'll learn more about that as we go. Okay, I'm going to start simply with you because it gets a little technical, and hopefully you can all stick with me because this is going to be worth your time. So now that I'm almost 15 minutes into this show, without further introduction, here is the choose your own adventure story. And as the story goes along, it'll be a little while before you're given your first option. So please be patient. If you've listened to this show before or today, you already possess great patience. Thank you for your patience. Here's the story. Okay, that's what I do when I'm getting serious. All right. 452 years ago, there lay a man dying alone in his little home in a little village that was part of a very big kingdom far away. In the big kingdom far away, in that little village's little home, was a little bed that this man laid on. The little bed he laid on was like most beds you would have seen back in those days. Nothing special, nothing like the comfort maximized California king-sized extra layers and foams and springs and fine material made beds of the Western world in our own very modern times. Just a simple bed, held together by a combination of boards, hay, covered with animal skins that were patched together as quilts that covered the man as he was about to die. He was in a fair amount of pain. A lot, actually. But he couldn't pinpoint the exact source of the pain. It was kind of an all-encompassing, everywhere pain. In his long life of 52 years, a full life for anyone back in that day and age, he had experienced all he could experience, he thought, while laying still on that makeshift bed. At 52 years, most people of that day and age looked about 80 years old in our time, in the 21st century. But he actually looked a bit younger. He had retained some of his youth and charm by living a healthy, clean life. He worked hard in his job as a woodworker, making furniture. Tables, chairs were his specialty. He could make anything with wood. He had helped establish his village after a terrible storm had knocked their huts down, and he had been quite industrious in his life by making beautifully simple wooden objects. He couldn't always afford the wood that the foresters provided him, so work came fairly slowly. In the meantime, he would farm and try to put food on the table for himself alone, as he had no family. And while he had friends, no one was around for him. No family, no doctor, no servant or helper or friend or nobody. No one knew at that moment that he was in pain. No one knew. He was sure someone would have come by if they had known, but no one knew. And he knew something was happening that was announcing to his mind in the clearest terms that this was the end of all that he knew. It was almost over. And as he laid there, incapacitated, unable to move, paralyzed from head to foot, if you were to have seen him or had been permitted to be there beside him, looking into his eyes that glanced upward to the old wooden raftered ceiling of his humble abode, you would have seen someone who was content. The look in his eyes was of someone who had lived a life that is full. He was feeling the sense of fulfillment and warm, euphoric blanket of light and peace washed over him just before the moment of death, which arrived only seconds later. The man who lay in bed alone, the carpenter, who had no one around, was now dead. Now I'm going to leave the story and give you, the listener, an unprecedented historical choice as a podcast listener. You can choose between two different options. And I need to be really clear with you on how this will work. This will take a little bit of time, but stick with me because as far as I know, it has never been offered before in a podcast. So I'm going to offer it now. Listen carefully. You have two options at this point in the story. Choice A or choice B. Choice A is that with the man now dead, he awakens in the afterlife and is actually given a choice on whether to stay dead or to wake up and live another year on Earth. Only this time, he would be discovered by a nobleman of the area as the last living descendant of the original bloodline to the throne, through a record that had been miraculously found in the kingdom, miraculously for him. Turns out, this is all part of choice A. Turns out a jealous prince took him from the princess at birth, subjecting him to a life of poverty. And while this guy was dying, a war was fought, and the victor was this man's family. So he is actually the rightful heir to the throne. In other words, he will be king. How cool is that? Is that a rags to riches story or what? So, if you choose choice A in this choose an adventure story, he'll come back to life and have the chance to live another year, and the story will pick up from the time he awakens. Choice B. Choice B is very different. If you choose choice B, this man will remain dead. There will be no afterlife, no chance for survival. All will be over, and the story ends right here. If you choose that part, then you're an nihilist, an atheist, or you're really bored right now and just want the show to end. Choice B is definitely the option that will end things right here. No questions asked, no warranty, no money back. Okay, so now you might be wondering, how do I make my choice? And I'll explain that because, as you can tell, nothing has popped up on the screen offering you a choice between A and B. What you have to do is a little technical, but I have really smart listeners, and I'm pretty sure you can figure it all out, okay? So, if you want to choose A, all you have to do is keep listening. For choice B, those of you still trying to figure that out, what you need to do is stop listening right now. To choose B, turn off the podcast, find something different to do. So that's it. Good job. Choice B, people. See ya. Bye. Now, for everyone thinking, what a joke. This guy completely fooled me into thinking this was a choose an adventure podcast. But it's nothing like that. Josh is a loser. He led me along. I wondered what he was up to. He's got problems thinking he's a podcaster when I've known for years he's a fraud. I say to you, be patient. Those are my words to you. Be absolutely patient. You will be able to make a choice using the technology you own. All right? Got that? So, choice A was chosen. And personally, I think you made the better choice. So here goes the next part. Choice A. Put on my story voice. Okay. After his very brief stint in that heavenly place, the man whose name was Daniel awakened back on the same bed upon which he had just passed away only moments before. So in this case, after having passed away, he, quote, passed back, or was passed back to his earthly home. I don't know if passed back is the opposite of passed away, but in the case of coming back to life, it should be the way we refer to this very rare phenomenon. He was there on his bed, laying down just as he had, but no longer in any pain whatsoever. The sun pouring through the windows, just as it had moments before. He knew virtually no time had passed between his passing this way and that, passing away, passing back, and he laid there, mulling over the promise he still remembered just as vividly as if he was still in that heavenly state when he remembered how his body was paralyzed before his passing, and now he could raise his arms out from underneath his blanket. And then he turned his legs from the bed to the floor. And after no time, he was sitting upright. And then he pushed himself from the bed with his arms, and without any knee or other joint pain that he was so accustomed to at that point in his life, previous life, he was standing next to his bed. He hadn't been able to rise from his bed this quickly in years. He wondered what would happen next. If this promise was true, that he was to be the next king of all the kingdom, how would news get to him? He had never before imagined anything so grand. He had never before experienced the excitement, the rush of ambition, pure ambition, the desire to climb the social, political, or economic ladder of life was nowhere within him until now. The seed had been planted, and the evidence so far suggested that the promise was to be believed because he felt young again. He looked younger. As he stood there, he wondered what he should do next. And listener, you are about to decide for him what he should do next. Now, don't get mad at me at these two choices. I'm just giving you your options, all right? Don't get upset. I just work here. Here are your two options. Choice A. Should Daniel stand in silence for a minute? Or choice B. Should Daniel choose to go to the door to step outside? If you chose A, then do nothing. If you chose B, then skip ahead exactly 1 minute, starting. Wait, hold on. I'll try to help everyone here. Find the fast forward part on your app or the web browser or your whatever you're looking at. Remember I said I wouldn't discriminate among your devices? So find where the fast forward is that allows you to skip ahead by 15 seconds or 30 seconds. You're going to have to do some math here because for the 15-second fast forwarding option, you will need to push that button 4 times. For 30 seconds, you'll have to push it 2 times to equal a minute. I'm explaining this for people who may not know. I know you know, but I'm just talking to those people who don't know. So if you chose B, then skip ahead. Are you ready? I'll give you to the count of 3, and we'll say now, right when you have to either fast forward or listen to 60 seconds of silence. Are you ready? Okay. 1, 2, 3, now. Okay, this is the silent part. So just imagine there's silence, that the man's just standing there in silence, complete and total nothingness silence. Those are for you who chose A. Okay, that's who you are right now. The others are fast forwarding through this part. And I've got to watch the clock because I want to keep this. I want it to be like right when it hits a minute, then the story continues. All right? So just imagine complete silence. I don't care where you are. Even if it's loud, just imagine silence. Imagine I'm not talking right now. Imagine you're not hearing my voice. So that's what we'll... Just then, Daniel heard the unusual sound of horses outside of his little hut. It was a sound unusual for that little village where the sounds were always more predictable. People talking, working. But this, the sound of strong, commanding voices of men arriving very nearby, and within moments, a firm knock at the makeshift door of his small home, followed by a booming, "Mr. Daniel of Yorkshire, son of Robert of Erstenweld, son of James the Great of Erstenweld, I come by appointment of the Great Council. Please present yourself." It was something like that. Daniel, still standing at his bedside, or wait, had he approached the door? I think in this choice he had approached the door, or something like that. Anyway, he was close. He was near his bed and the door. It was a very small place. He felt a smile forming on his face for the first time in a long time. And could you blame him? The life of abject poverty, hunger, the pain of recent years, culminating in today's death and subsequent heavenly visitation with a distinct, better than true promise that he might be king, the seeming coming back to life, and now, without waiting more than a few minutes, the vision is coming to pass. He looked down at what he was wearing, which was nothing more than smelly rags. He smoothed his long, raggedy facial hair with his fingers and felt dirt and small stones from the beard dropping to his dirty, bare feet below. He was the exact opposite appearance of a king, or if he had been a king, he was as one who had spent a lifetime imprisoned. Again, there was banging on the door, at which point Daniel could wait no longer. He opened the door, and the tall, strong soldier standing before him was surrounded by a dozen or so men, all adorned in the finest, most costly uniforms of red and silver, bright and shiny, chainmail armor with a striking coat of arms pattern imprinted over the chest. It was a more impressive scene than he had ever experienced, with the exception of this heavenly visit, which was more extraordinary by leaps and bounds over this one, but still, he was now firmly present back in his world, the world he had experienced for 52 years, and this moment was far and away more extraordinary than anything this world had offered him. The soldier at the door shouted out, "Read the decree of the Great Council!" And Daniel saw that to the right of the man at his entryway was a shorter nobleman, unraveling a great parchment between two scrolls. And this man began to read, "Mr. Daniel of Yorkshire, son of Robert of Erstenweld, son of James the Great Erstenweld, it is by decree of the Great Council that we..." And at that point, the nobleman read a brief account of Daniel's entire lineage, going back almost to Adam, a distinguished line of rulers and leaders over the kingdom for centuries before him. Now, we are long overdue for the next choice before you, the listener. And you can only choose between one of the two. Maybe someday there will be technology and podcasts that will allow between 3 choices, but I'm limited by the technology I have. In the choice, which you will be able to choose, either A, choice A, he is sent to the dungeon. Which doesn't really make sense in this story right now, but let's just say it is, because that's the whole point of these, is some things don't make a lot of sense, but let's say he's sent to the dungeon. Choice A. Choice B, the next scene, he's throned as king. Have you made your choice? All right, good. Hold that thought, because I am not at all ready to figure out how to satisfy those who choose A and those who choose B. So I hope you'll give me a week or so and I'll be able to figure it out. I'm sure I'll be able to figure it out. Until next time, remember what you chose, because I'll just jump right in after probably a super long explanation of things.
Thank you for listening to the Josh Podcast Show, the anti-podcast podcast on God and man. For more information, visit joshpodcast.com. Follow Josh on Twitter at Josh Rolfe. That's Rolfe, R-O-L-P as in podcast, H. Now go and have the best day and night ever. And have fun.